So, have a special guest today on Bitcoinomics 21. We have Trevor Bello. Trevor, thanks so much for being here. Really do appreciate it. So, me and Trevor actually met in Bitcoin Las Vegas at the conference there, and he told me about his podcast. He showed me how passionate he was about Bitcoin mining. When I started my podcast about a month ago, we got in touch and decided, all right, let's try it. Let's try to do a collab. So, a little bit about Trevor's background: Chief Propaganda Officer at Bitcoin Mining World. Responsibilities include podcast hosts, content creation, relationship building. Bitcoin Mining World, which is a company that takes an education-based marketing approach where they educate people about mining and then act as a middleman for the purchase and sales of mining equipment, sites, etc. He also has his own podcast called Build a Mine Podcast, which he helps plebes or pre-coiners understand the role of Bitcoin mining and essentially educating everything from the plebe home mining side, which is his favorite, to the industrial operations. So, Trevor, before we kind of get into it, a couple of things to define just for the audience. Chief Propaganda Officer, propagandist, define that a little bit, because obviously when you talk about it colloquially, people are like, propaganda, and they freak out. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So Bitcoin, the Bitcoin industry is the only industry where you can say I'm a propagandist and people are like, I get it. So at the end of the day, like, I propagandize Bitcoin. You know, I'm out here shilling Bitcoin. I'm out here preaching Bitcoin. I'm a Bitcoin evangelist. And so I use my platform, the Build a Mine podcast, and I have a couple other platforms that I work on, but Twitter and the Build a Mine podcast, I just use that to help people understand Bitcoin. And I'm what you guys would call like a Bitcoin maximalist. I don't know if I'm toxic necessarily. I'm non-confrontational most of the time. So I don't like to get super confrontational, but like I do have a toxic maxi vibe inside of me. And yeah, the propagandist it's just a funny thing. I'm not really like a propagandist, like shilling that doesn't matter. Like, so like at the end of the day, I think it's super important that people understand not just that Bitcoin is the best money in the world, but like how Bitcoin is the best money in the world. And I do it in my own kind of style, which is a very carefree, lackadaisical attitude about it. But I very much tell people that, like, hey, don't dabble in shit coins, buy Bitcoin, mine Bitcoin, you know, heat reuse all the way, that kind of stuff. So that's why I'm a propagandist.
Okay, all Bitcoin through and through.
Exactly.
I love it, man. I love it. So let's kind of go ahead and jump into it. How did you exactly get into Bitcoin? Like, what the very first time you heard about it to like when you bought it to then like mining? Like, how did it all happen?
So it was an interesting story for me, and I'm going to try to keep it like just as summed up as much as possible. So I heard about Bitcoin in 2020 or 2021. It was the first run up to 60,000. I had a buddy that I worked with at the time, and his dad was an early cypherpunk. And so he was actually like mining Bitcoin on his laptop back in like 2012. So long time ago. So the dude had like a lot of Bitcoin on a hard drive, and he was telling me about it. He's like, yeah, I got all this Bitcoin. It's worth $60,000 a coin. And at the time, like, I'm painting cars, I'm making minimum wage. Like I'm like, you dude, like, I can't buy a Bitcoin. What the hell is this? Like, I don't care. Like, and I ignored it. And it wasn't until 22, it wasn't until 22 that I actually got into Bitcoin as well. But there was kind of like a couple precursors. You know, people talk about how like there's these precursors to like you understanding something, and that's kind of how it was for me. So 2021, I heard about Bitcoin, but before that, I'd bought a house. And at the time of buying my house with my wife, you know, I'm looking at this job that I'm working full time, you know, overtime. I'm getting taxed to hell and back. And, what was really hard to like get my head around was the fact that like if I keep living this way, if I keep working this hard, I'm never going to get to like where I want to get. And this house that we bought is a small home, and I'm like, we want property, we want, you know, a big family, we want all these things, and I don't know how I'm going to make it happen. So at that time I started dabbling in like the stock market and trying to understand real estate, because I thought that that's how it was supposed to be done. Skip to 22. I got married to my wife, and I got scammed out of an NFT.
Yo.
Yeah, I ended up spending $600 on an NFT. I got completely scammed. The $600 was gone, and my wife was pissed because the whole time she's telling me, hey, Trev, like, this is not something we should be investing our money in, babe. Like, yeah. So got scammed out of that. And right around the same time that I got scammed out of that, I had, you know, investing in stocks and bonds, learning about real estate, I fell across the Millennial Investors podcast. And if you're not familiar with this, so it's a podcast that just like teaches about investing in all kinds of different like things. They talk about Warren Buffett, they talk about Charlie Munger, like all these things. And Preston Pysh owns that company with Stig Broderson. So Preston Pysh started running in 22. He started running his Bitcoin Fundamentals podcast. Now, I was on Coinbase at the time. I had a little bit of Bitcoin. I had a bunch of other shit coins as well. And I started learning about Bitcoin through the Fundamentals podcast. And that was when the light bulb clicked for me. That was like, this is the outlet. This is the thing that I've been looking for. And I get it. I understand it. So I sold all of my shit coins. I cashed out my 401k. I cashed out my wife's IRA, and we went full into Bitcoin. Sort of. It was honestly, it was like a babe, like, this is the thing, like, we need to do this. And she wasn't on board at first because of the whole NFT thing. So she wasn't on board, but so I'd cashed out mine, and I put all of our excess money into Bitcoin. And it took about a year before I was able to like convince her that like cashing out her IRA was a good idea. So like I did it for her. Probably shouldn't have, but it was a good decision and she's happy about it now. But yeah, that's my journey into Bitcoin.
That's crazy. You just like plunged right in at one point.
You know,
really went in.
It's interesting because like I've always been the type of person that I learn like with a hands-on experience. And I think that the NFT, like that was my cost of tuition. You know what I mean? Because I couldn't understand what I was investing in, like what I was buying. And someone was promised. And that was like the precursor that really did it for me. Because once I started listening to Preston Pysh's podcast and understanding the actual fundamentals of Bitcoin, it was like, oh no, that makes sense. Like I understand digital scarcity. I understand like the unit economics of it. I understand how money is like broken. Like all of these things click for me. And so it was like, well, I can easily understand this. And I guess going back to, 2020 when I started learning about stocks and bonds, I read a book by, I can't remember the name of the guy, but it was called The Warren Buffett Way. And in this book, there's a couple pieces of advice that I learned. And the number one piece of advice was never invest in something that you don't understand. Now, this is the best piece of advice that anybody could have. And so when I spent the money on the NFT, is like, I shouldn't have done that. I knew better, but I shouldn't have done that. And I lost the money. But when I started putting money into Bitcoin and I started learning about the fundamentals of Bitcoin, it's not hard for you to understand the fundamentals of Bitcoin. You might have preconceived notions of what money is, and that makes it a little difficult to understand how Bitcoin is money. Like, how is this digital thing money? But when you start diving down the rabbit hole, you start paying attention to why Bitcoin is the best money that we've ever had, why digital scarcity matters, why this global economic trade of money can be a digital thing, which it's already mostly digital anyways. Once you start to understand that, you can put the piece of Bitcoin on top of that puzzle super easily.
Man, I really appreciate you explaining all that and just like your journey into it. And it's interesting because you mentioned people taking out their 401k. I did the same thing. I had two 401ks and I did the same thing, but I don't know if you felt the same, but when I initially did, I was like, this all seems right. I feel right about doing this, but I'm so scared.
Yes, and you should feel that way.
So scared.
You should feel that way. I mean, like it's your savings, Like a lot of people don't put like that much stock into like where their money goes, and that's a problem. Like if you are doing something, like let's say you buy a house and you're doing it as an investment, like you better know that house is going to be a good investment. If you're going to put sweat equity into it, you're going to build it out and you're going to be able to sell it for like more than what you bought it for. Like you better know without a shadow of a doubt that like you're going to put your work into it. But there's always that risk of like, what if something happens? You never know. And so like I was there too, man. Like I was like, I fully agree with everything that I'm understanding about Bitcoin. I'm all in. But there's a chance that I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'm going to lose everything.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure you look back on it now and you're thinking you don't regret it for a second.
No, not at all. Not one bit, man. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I feel like once you take that plunge, and obviously, so I'm I'll be honest, I'm mostly maxi. I'm like 92%. I have like some other stuff here for yeah, I know the bit listen, I'm like in the middle of everything. Bitcoin maxis are like, why do you do that? It's like, I don't know, I just have some. Leave me alone. And then like other like people like on Ethereum and Ripple are like, why do you have so much Bitcoin? It's like, because I want it. So I'm like stuck in
Listen,
the middle.
listen. I will, like I said, I'm non-confrontational. I will not sit here and tell you that like your decision is dumb to like diversify and get into other stuff. I won't say that.
But man's is thinking it right
I'm
now.
thinking it. I'm thinking it. But here's the deal. Here's the deal. It's your money. You earn it. You work for it. You trade your life force for it. Doesn't matter. I can tell you that Bitcoin's the best thing in the world. I can tell you that shitcoins are the best thing in the world. It doesn't matter because what you feel intrinsically in your soul, like that's where you need to put your money. And if you feel comfortable putting a little bit of your money into shitcoins, that's your prerogative. You know what I mean? You do what you want. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you what to do with your money. I'm just not going to like if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, what should I put my money in?" Like they're specifically asking for advice. I'm not going to tell them to buy Ethereum. I'm not going to tell them to buy Solana. I'm not going to tell them to buy all these shitcoins. I'm going to tell them, "Hey, buy Bitcoin, buy gold. If you want to do a little bit of leverage trading, buy Master." There are things that it's kind of wishy-washy, but like I said, I'm not a toxic maximalist. I just have some toxic takes.
I love how you define that. So with like some of these other shit coins, as it's said in like the Bitcoin world and crypto world. So it's like even with Ethereum, the number 2 leading cryptocurrency, what are your thoughts on that? Especially with so they've implemented a lot of smart contracts, right? You have
Yeah.
all these stable coins, and then you have the stablecoin bill with the Genius Act and Clarity Act, which all those stable coins will probably be built on the Ethereum network. So give us your thoughts on what's been happening recently and just like Ethereum as a whole,
Yeah.
just to focus on that.
I'm going to preface this by saying like I am your the if you look in a dictionary of like 80 IQ Bitcoiner,
Mhm.
that's me. You know what I mean? Like
I love it.
I
I love
that's
it.
me.
I love it.
I'm building a different company like outside of Bitcoin. And so like I really don't spend too much time diving into the global macro, the economics of other things. So my answer is not gonna be like the best answer
No,
to,
that's
but this is my answer.
what is your
So
take?
my take is that like stable coins, if you look at third world countries, these situations where the money's being inflated 100x in like a day, you look at Argentina, you look at different parts of Pakistan, you look at Gaza and like Palestine and all these places where the money is like more broken than we have it here. Stable
Yeah.
coins make sense, because it's the cleanest dirty shirt, for lack of a better word. um
Nice analogy. Nice
yeah,
analogy.
yeah,
Yeah, I like it. Honestly, I
it's the
like it. I
cleanest dirty
like it.
shirt. The From what I understand though is that like all these stable coins could be backed by Bitcoin. And I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Bitcoin, like as we scale out, as we build out, the Lightning Network and other third layer, principles or policies, like we could build all of this on top of Bitcoin. And to be honest, Ethereum is like they've the thing that pisses me off the most about like all these other shitcoins is the fact that they change constantly because they have somebody, some corporation, some leader at the top of the pyramid that gets to make decisions that have downstream effects for everybody within that pyramid. So within that network. So Ethereum's changed multiple times. It used to be proof of work. Now it's proof of stake. Maybe it
You're
moves to
right.
something else.
You're right.
I don't feel comfortable with that. And it's the same thing with like XRP, the fact that like the Ripple owners of XRP, like they don't even like hold a massive amount of XRP. They hold Bitcoin. They gave a bunch of pre-mined tokens to their buddies. Like I have a problem with that. And so it comes back fundamentally to like who has control over your money, over the network in which you put your energy into. And so stablecoins being built on Ethereum, like, all right, cool. I guess it's useful for people in these different countries and regimes where, their money is being debased with hyperinflation by a lot. It is very helpful. But I think in the grand scheme of things, these things are going to slowly move towards Bitcoin. I mean, we've seen Tether is already talking about backing their stablecoin with Bitcoin.
Really?
Yeah, I'm
I
pretty
didn't
sure.
realize
I
that.
could be wrong,
Okay.
but I thought I heard on
No,
a
no, I
podcast
didn't
sometime.
realize that. Okay.
But like I think we're just going to see this as Bitcoin grows in dominance. We're going to start to see people realizing that like anything you want to build in the digital ecosystem can be built. Like anything with money that is being built on the digital ecosystem can be built on top of Bitcoin. Maybe it can't be done right now, but we can do it eventually. So that's my
Fair enough.
take. I don't know if that helps.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I just value your opinion because I want to hear everybody's opinion and
For
see
sure.
where everyone's coming from at the end of the day. I think it's important to understand, hey, like, this is what you think, this is what another person thinks. And it's like, we need to collectively kind of come together. We don't have to agree. Like, everyone doesn't need to agree, right? And I
No.
think that's the beauty of this. It's like people don't need to agree, but let's hear each other's opinions on this. So I'm glad you brought up everything being backed by Bitcoin. So yes or no, in the near future, in the next, like, let's say, I won't give a time frame, but in the near future, Bitcoin becomes a world's reserve currency. Yes or no on that?
I think yes. I think at the end of the day, like whether it takes 10 years, whether it takes 20 years, everything is moving towards Bitcoin. Now, that is to say, nothing else comes in and dominates over Bitcoin. You know, we've seen technologies in the past get dominated. You know, MySpace got dominated by Facebook. Facebook got dominated by Twitter. You know, there's all types of things can happen. The world is our oyster, for lack of a better phrase. But as it stands right now, like Bitcoin is built off of several fundamental principles of money. Money is one half of every single transaction. You know, if you and I do something, we have to have that unit economic, like that layer in between so that we can transfer value. As Bitcoin gains stability, because right now Bitcoin is very unstable. So, like, you have people who are looking at it as like, well, why would I denominate in Bitcoin? Because like if I earn $1 of Bitcoin today, one Satoshi today, it's not worth the same amount tomorrow because maybe it's gone up, maybe it's gone down. So people don't like that volatility. So as a unit of exchange, Bitcoin is not like the best as of right now. But as we grow as a network, as Bitcoin starts to stabilize, we see more and more people using it as a unit of measurement, as a value things in the world, because it's stable. And it might take 20 years to get to that point, but I do believe that countries, and we're seeing it today, we're seeing countries start to hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet as a strategic reserve. They might not be like advertising that, but it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, China, US, like, everyone's
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah. The Kingdom of Bhutan, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
happening.
they are mining Bitcoin because they realize, wow, we need to diversify our economy, and now
Absolutely.
they're mining Bitcoin with renewable energies. That's wild. And Bhutan is tiny. It's a tiny,
Well,
tiny country.
and this is, I mean, we could get into this a little bit, but the thing about mining is that because Bitcoin miners are a buyer of last resort, because they're energy agnostic, it doesn't matter where in the world you have for the last like 25 years there's been a huge push for renewable energy resources. You know,
Right.
we've pushed away and towards solar power. The problem with solar power or wind power is that like they're not dependable, you know? And so a lot of cities, a lot of rural towns, a lot of states have suffered because they don't have the infrastructure build out to like actually build these renewable energies resources. But Bitcoin miners have become energy buyers of last resort. We'll buy your power. Just, you know, if you have excess power, we'll buy it. You know,
Yeah.
and we're seeing small towns across rural America start to develop their own Bitcoin mining infrastructure to not only stabilize their grids, but also
Wow.
provide capital for their citizenry, for their population, for their city to grow. And so I do think we start seeing like more sovereign cities and states in the United States as well.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not calling the future, but I do think that we have global contenders, we have city states, and we have citadels start growing in our countries and other countries in the West as people realize that like the government doesn't care about you. People start to realize that control over money and control over religion and control over food sources is like the
Yeah.
number one way to suppress a population. Once people start to
Wow.
realize that and they start like realizing that they can actually do something about it, it changes the dynamic of how the world works.
You're absolutely right. Because then at that point, we start to go more in a decentralized way.
Exactly.
It's like how Bitcoin is. And it's like funny how you mentioned that you have more sovereign city states or maybe like sovereign states, right? You have states such as Texas, and then I'm forgetting the other two. I don't know if it was Arizona, and then there's another state in there, maybe New Hampshire. I'm forgetting, but they pass a Bitcoin strategic reserve so they can start to invest more into Bitcoin.